From the studios of Books in Motion, this is Sciarrio reading Hunted, an Altered Creatures epic fantasy adventure by Anthony G. Wedgeworth. Now, let's begin with Hunted. Preface. Post-war provinces. It was an uneasy time for civilization. The Brothers of War had divided the 7 provinces and pitted them against one another, until a final civil war destroyed the infrastructure that held them united. Both heirs to the throne had lost their war and were no longer the rulers of anything. Due to the vacuum of leadership, each province became its own sovereign state. Decades later, each settled in with its own rulers, laws, and culture. Woodland's northern lands grew into 2 distinct classes. In order to keep the lower class from revolting, the upper class held events to entertain the masses, such as gladiator fights in their Colosseum and propaganda plays in their theaters. Dublin was the heart of the Old Kingdom and retained the majority of the military strength. Centrally located and at the mouth of the Volney River, it stayed the primary trading location between the north, the south, and the east. Eastland became a military outpost that dealt with the daily risk of the altered creatures taking advantage of the broken kingdom. They were the first line of defense. River's Edge was all but destroyed by the war, which left it submerged underwater. The final battle had taken place there as a massive wave washed its way up the river. The great Luthrulum Lake rose nearly 4 yards that day and never lowered afterward. All cities in this lowland province are still flooded. Pelonthal was hidden away behind the Mythical Forest. Its scattered little cities along the lake's coastline grew into individual communities with their own relaxed rules and conduct. They enjoyed the freedom of not being controlled by any government or ruler. They even allowed altered creatures to live among them. Greensbrook continued to be the primary crop-growing and harvesting location, as they shipped their needed produce to all the other provinces in trade for the supplies they needed for their people. Southwind, however, turned dark after the fall of the kingdom. Infighting within the government opened the doors for underground leadership, which led to an increase of loan sharking, gambling, prostitution, extortion, political corruption, and murder. The matriarch used the chaos to her advantage to become the most powerful, unofficial leader in the Southwind province. Her reign of terror grew large enough to control all of the mines and the military. Her goal was to unify all the provinces back together under her control. Chapter 1. Fallen. Several roars echoed across the jungle from a 6-headed hydra standing at the top of a hill. Blood coated its heads and necks from a mighty battle that had ended with the creature knocking its opponent over a short cliff and then down a steep incline. However, once alone, the hydra faded from existence as though it was never really there. Santorray tumbled down the jungle's muddy hillside, destroying small trees and large ferns along his way. Larger tree trunks cracked and shredded apart upon impact along his path down into the water at the base of the ravine. The large bone spikes across his back drove deep into the stream's mud adjacent to the shoreline. Acting like anchors, the bone spikes prevented the current from washing him downstream. His wolf-like legs and paws floated in the fast-moving water, like a flag in a mild wind. However, his red, muscular human torso was locked into place, while his dragon-like muzzle leaned slightly to one side. Santorray coughed up blood from internal injuries. He had barely enough strength remaining to lift himself up, let alone continue to run. Because of this, he took a moment to rest as he looked up at the wavering palm trees and graceful clouds sliding across the sky. A ringing in his small ears overpowered the noise of the flowing water and the local jungle animals. It was a noise he had heard before when hit in the head during battle. This time, there wasn't a grand battle to be proud of. Instead, he was being hunted. The tracking abilities of these predators were exceptional, but it was their use of an alchemist's high magic that had drained Santorray down to his current situation. After
Sample complete. Ready to continue?